There you go. Everyone's muted now. And we're just sharing this on YouTube, and then we'll share it on Facebook. Good evening, Kayla Gittel. This time I see it, so I'm mentioning it specifically. Good evening, Jim. Good evening, Margot and Chagai. Good evening to Ruth. Good evening to my friend in Lakewood. Let me just share this. L'chaim, good evening, Elise. Good evening, Erica in Norway. Here we go. Good evening, Carmen.
What city is she in Norway?
I have to ask her. She joins us every week. Erica, type in the box. Tell us where you are in Norway. Are you in Oslo or somewhere else in Norway? Elise, I know. Well, good to see you from Baltimore. And Calgary, Alberta. Look at that. Our congregation is growing. Good evening, Danielle. Great to see you. Glad to be back. There we go. Okay, we covered all ground. We're broadcasting on all our systems. First of all, I'd like to say that it's a special moment today for the Jewish community of Montana. Our third Torah scroll, our third permanent Torah scroll for our shul, made its way today in the last few weeks from Israel to New York, from New York to Tucson. And today, I had the great honor of bringing it with me on my flights from Tucson to Vegas to Bozeman. And now it finds itself in our beautiful ark alongside our other two Torahs, so Shechianu, V'Kimanu, V'Gianu, Lizman Hazeh. We are very grateful for this moment. And to answer your question, Chagai, Erica tells us that she's in the west coast of Norway, where it's 3 a.m. right now. Talk about devotion. Who has devotion like Erica? Comes at 3 a.m. to hear me talk. The story, I should start just because of that. I should start with the story with the guy who was pulled over at 1 o'clock in the morning speeding. And the cop asked him, "Where are you speeding? Why are you speeding at this hour?" He says, "I'm going to a lecture." So the cop says, "A lecture at 1 o'clock in the morning? From who?" He says, "From my wife." And so, right, you like it. So you mentioned 3 o'clock in the morning. It got me thinking. It's always good to start with a good joke. So, in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Shelach Lecha, we talk about the portion, it talks about primarily the story of the 12 scouts, the 12 spies that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was asked to send to Israel to scout out the land, not to discuss whether the land was ours and whether it was conquerable. God had already told the Jewish people that they were going to conquer the land, that he would actually help them conquer the land miraculously. They wanted to know, sort of a reconnaissance mission, to figure out what's the best route to take. And they went along the length and the breadth of the land of Israel. And 10 of the 12 tribes come back with negative news. There's giants and there's funerals and there's big fruit. It's not a land to inhabit. We should stay far away. Caleb ben Yefuneh, as he's known in Hebrew, but AKA Caleb, he went to pray at the resting place of Imarat HaMachpelah, Hebron, in Hebron. He went to pray at the resting place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our patriarchs, and our matriarchs, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And he too becomes spiritualized to the point that he doesn't fall into the trap of the 10 tribes. And Joshua, who eventually becomes Moses's, not only his second in command, but eventually becomes Moshe's replacement. Moshe puts him in charge to take over as leader of the Jewish people to lead the Jews into the land of Israel. He never got sucked into the trap in the first place. Why not? Because before he left Israel, before he left the desert to go to Israel, if we look on page 885 in the Life Chumash that we're studying from, it says, these were the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land. Moshe called Hoshea, son of Nun, Yehoshua. Moshe changed his name. Imagine one day you're sitting with your master, with your teacher. In this case, it's Moshe. And Moshe says, the name Hoshea is very nice, but you need some unique powers in order to go to Israel and come back in one piece and not get sucked into any inappropriate philosophies. And so he changes his name to Yehoshua, and as Rashi tells us from the Medrash, Yehoshua comes from the words Yud-Kei, which is the name of God. Yud-Kei Yeshiacho me'atzas meraglim, may God protect you from the atzat, from the eitzah, from the advice, from the ideas and conspiracies with which the other 10 spies are going to come up with. And so something here needs explanation. If Moses was scared that the spies going to Israel, the scouts, were going to get the meraglim, were going to get in trouble and go down a path with warped ideology, then why didn't he bless all of them? Right? Why didn't he just give all of them a blessing and say, may you all succeed and come back in one piece with good news? Or may God protect all of you on your mission in the land of Israel? Why just Joshua? And if he wasn't concerned because they were known to be very, very holy and good people, then why did he need to give Joshua the special blessing? In other words, either they all need it or none of them need it. How is it that you're only giving it to one, but not to, let's close this door right here. Why are you giving it to one and not to the others? It makes no sense. They're all on the same team. The goal for all of them is the same. Why not give it to them all? And so what I share with you tonight, I never claim ever, I never ever claim to come and make up my own ideas. I only share what I learned from my teachers, and in this case, my primary teacher, my mentor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and what he shared in the summer of 1955. So Tafshin Tezvav, 1955, the Rebbe addressed this question, and this is what he shared. He said, the Talmud says in the tractate of Shabbat, the Talmud says that Kach umnato shel yetzer hara, hayom omer lecha aseh kach, ulemachar omer lecha aseh kach, ad sheomer lo avod avodah zara. The Talmud says that the way the evil inclination works, right? How do you get sucked in? How does a Jew get sucked in to disobey God's requests? God says, Sheikh Lulav and Esrog on Sukkot, I'm too busy. God says, listen to the shofar and Rosh Hashanah, I have to be at work. God says, do you have a Pesach Seder on Pesach? I'm sorry, I planned my winter break. I'm going to be, my spring break, I'm going to be in Cancun. I can't make it to a Seder. Why would someone do that? So the Talmud says that the evil inclination is an uman b'melachto. He's an expert. He's not just, he's good. In Yiddish, they call it a fachman. Uman. He's a trained success story, the evil inclination, because he knows how to work with people. The evil inclination never came to a Jew and said, listen, do me a favor, let's go to church on Sunday. The Jew will look at him and say, church, are you crazy? Get out of my face. Come, let's go bow to the Dalai Lama. Let's go get on our knees and give a shake to the Dalai Lama, to some Buddhist statue, or to some Hindu god made out of a cow. We're going to bow to him or to her. I don't know if their gods are female or male. I don't know how they see themselves. No Jew is going to say to the evil inclination, oh, sure, let's leave shul and go straight to the church. Let's leave shul and go straight to the Buddha. Because the evil inclination knows Jews won't do it. So what does he do? He does it strategically. Meaning, he comes to you and says, you're a busy guy, you're a busy woman. You go to shul, you're doing a mitzvah. Do you have to do it with a Hidur mitzvah? Do you have to do the mitzvah that God told you in the most beautiful way? Do you really have to spend $112 on an esrog, on a citron? You can't buy the one that comes from Israel with 32 bumps that has 4 brown spots on each side, the most unclassy, unattractive etrog, but it costs $22, and the guy's selling it to you on the street like it's a flea market, and you save the $100. Can't you do the mitzvah just with that? And do you have to get handmade matzah that was shmura, that was protected from the minute the wheat was being grown until it was harvested and ground and baked into matzah? Can't you buy just regular boxes of Yehuda Manischewitz matzah Besides, it digests way better than the handmade shmur matzahs the rabbi gives out that seems like the rabbi is trying to kill us all. So the evil inclination knows that a Jew has a beautiful, pure soul. We say in our prayers every morning, Elokai neshama shenasata bi, my Lord, the soul which you put inside of me, tahiri, it's pure. Ata barasa, you created it. Ata yatzarta, you formed it. Ata nafachta bi, you blew it into me. Ata meshamra b'kirbi, and you protect it within me. And therefore, the evil inclination knows that a Jew that wakes up every day and has that type of recognition that they're so one with their Creator, the only way you can get them to break the law and eventually end up in God-forsaken places is if you do it incrementally, you do it step by step, just like we do baby steps on the holy side. The evil inclination knows that it can only do baby steps on the negative side as well, because otherwise Jews won't join the bandwagon. And so, if regarding every mitzvah that's the case, then especially when it comes to the mitzvah that Avat Yisrael, of loving and caring for your fellow Jews, being a kind, merciful person, which is the foundation of all of Judaism, as Rabbi Akiva said, Zek Klal Gadol B'Torah, it's a great principle of Judaism, that if we allow the evil inclination to mess with it a little bit, even if the evil inclination gets a little, says, do you have to love them so much? Do you have to really go that much out of your way to help another human being? You have a busy life. It's a little complicated. Do you really have to be so altruistic? You have to be so careful, because when they start you down that path, before you know it, you wake up one day and you turned into a cruel person. Right? We see today in our politics, for example, both here and unfortunately even in Eretz Yisrael, even in Israel, in the political arena, there's literal cruelty. Not cruelty to animals, which is also prohibited in the Torah, cruelty to human beings. There's no compassion, there's no empathy, there's no humanity. And basically the teaching here is that if you end up going down the path where you allow the evil inclination to take away a little bit of your humanity, he'll do it incrementally, and eventually you'll be left with no humanity. Which makes the following statement in the Talmud very curious. The Talmud says that there was an individual that was trying to convert to Judaism. And he came to Shammai, the great Shammai. There was Hillel and Shammai. He comes to Shammai and he says to Shammai, I want you to teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. What does it say? Shammai did, Dochvoi ba'amas habinyin. Shammai took this wannabe convert and shoved him into the foundation of the building. Gave him a frask and sent him flying. Whether it was literally or figuratively, the bottom line is he had no patience or interest in dealing with this dude. And we'll talk about why in a minute. So he has no choice. He goes to Hillel. He goes to Hillel and says, I want to convert while standing on one foot. Hillel says to him, Da'alach sani l'chavrach le'sabid. What you don't want done, what you hate for yourself, don't do unto others. Ve'idach pirushu, the rest of the Torah is an explanation on that teaching. If you could learn to treat other people the way you want to be treated, that is the foundation of the whole Torah. Everything else you're going to study, the 612 other mitzvot, are all commentary, are all a way of manifesting and expressing that foundation in different ways. Now, let's ask a very basic question. How is it possible that Hillel and Shammai had such a different viewpoint? He sends him flying into the building wall, and he says, sure, just don't hate other people. Don't treat other people the way you wouldn't want to be treated. And the explanation is as follows. Shammai represented the tzaddikim community, the community of righteous people. Tzaddikim, holy Jews, who treat themselves very, very strictly. It's not like they're judgmental, they're not. But the way they live their life in their relationship to God is called, in the realm of Dvurot, they are very severe with themselves. They take themselves very seriously. They're sincere, it's raw. They're meticulous in their service of God. And what happens when you become meticulous in your service of God, you don't really have room in your life at a certain point for interacting with superficiality. So a certain level of tzaddikim, of righteous people, certain level of tzaddikim, they don't have, I don't want to say the word patience, because it's not about patience. They don't have a place within them. There's no room within them to allow the distractions and the challenges of the outside world get in the way of, hold on, let me just mute that. Get in the way of what they are trying to accomplish spiritually. That's why Reb Shimon ben Yochai, the great sage, the author of the Zohar, when he was in the cave for 13 years with his son hiding from the Romans, when he came out after 12 years, he was ready to burn down the whole world. Everything he saw, he said, oh my gosh, they're wasting their time working in agriculture. They're wasting their time doing this. He couldn't handle the world because he got into such a realm of Shammai. He got into such a realm of a severe form of righteous service of God, where they're so meticulous and so focused that they don't have room in their life for anything outside of that. The word Shammai, I want to make a special welcome. I want to take a pause to welcome Heshi. Does Heshi hear me? Shalom. I think it's the first time that Heshi is joining our class formally. And so, Heshi, we know all about you from your dad, and we're happy to see you at a Torah class. Now I'm going to go back to, that was a commercial message from my buddy Heshi, and now I'm going back to class. So, Shammai, right, the school of Shammai was all about Sham Chesed. What does the word Shammai come? It's like an assessor. You know when you need an appraisal on your house, and somebody calls a Shammai, he comes in Hebrew, I think, Chagai, shake your head if I'm right. I think in Israel, in Hebrew, it's still called a Shammai, somebody that comes and does assessments, does appraisals. So Shammai means the guy who is always appraising himself and reappraising himself and checking in on his soul and experiencing introspection. So he wants things to be real, he wants things to be internalized, he wants things to be spiritually metabolized. And this ger, this convert shows up and says, hey, could you convert me on one foot? He throws him into the building. There's no room for a dude like that in Shammai's presence, because Shammai takes Yiddishkeit way too seriously in the avodah of tzaddikim, in the spiritual holy service of a tzaddik. He has no patience, time, or energy to deal with someone who doesn't take Yiddishkeit seriously and thinks it's a big fat joke because he wants to become a Jew standing on one foot. He wasn't upset at him. He wasn't angry at him. He simply had no room in his life to deal with someone like that. So what does he do? He goes to Hillel. Now what's Hillel? The word Hillel is the word Behilu Neiroi, which means the lighting of a candle, right? It was all about kindness and giving and illumination. So he goes to Hillel, and Hillel says, sure, you want to attain an experience of the entire Torah? Madaloch Sani, what you hate, what you don't like done to you, don't do it to someone else. If you get that principle internalized, the rest of Torah will fall right into place. Hillel could handle him because Hillel did not represent the avodah of tzaddikim, even though he was a righteous person. He represented a proper manhig Yisrael. That's why the halacha is like Hillel, because Hillel's the manhig. Hillel is the leader of the Jewish people, and a leader has to be able to not only interact with super holy people who live in caves and want to be very meticulous with themselves and therefore don't know how to interact with others. To be a proper Jewish leader, a manhig Yisrael, or in the words of the Zohar, a raya mehemna, a faithful shepherd of the Jewish people, of the flock, you have to be able to see something so unique in each individual and give them opportunities, even if it doesn't it doesn't really tickle you in the way you'd like. You have to be able to make room for them too, because it's not about you. You're a leader. You have to be there for every person in whatever journey they're going through. It's a fascinating concept, and I'm going to elaborate on it from the Zohar, because the Zohar says something incredible in the two places in the Zohar. It says there were three righteous people who each of them lived a generation that misbehaved, but it was a totally different experience. Number one was Noah and the great flood. Noach. We all had the floods in Montana 10 days ago, and we all thought we were about to get our arks, our teva, because we felt like we're going to fly, we're going to be riding with them. But Noach was lived in a generation of immorality and unethical behavior. And what did he do? He prayed for himself and his family. He was a righteous person. Tzaddik, it says in Parshas Noach that he was a tzaddik. Tami Moya b'dei Reisav. But he prayed for himself and his family. He didn't worry about everyone else. But God told him to build an ark. So when people came to him and said, "Hey, Noah, what's up with this big construction project for 120 years?" He said, "Oh, God's bringing a flood to destroy the world because you guys are so immoral." So first of all, he had to wait for them to come and ask the question. And then he gave them a little bit of a mussar shmooze. He gave them a little bit of a pep talk. But he never went out of his way to go find them. So he should have been running around the streets telling people, "Guys, there's a flood coming." Right? Like Paul Revere. He should have been riding on his horse saying, "The British are coming, the British are coming." He should have been screaming that the flood is coming. But he didn't. In a sense, and I have to be careful with my words, but in a sense, Noah represented spiritual selfishness. Anias Nazi Tzalti, I took care of myself. I daven 3 times a day. I wear a big fat, I have a 62-foot gartel. I'm wrapped up in some, we call it a zaydin zupitza, a big silk kapota or a silk whatever, some fancy cloth. Oh, I'm going to sit there like a gresa boich, and I'm going to celebrate Shabbos, while there's thousands of Jews that I never even reached out to because I'm busy with my spiritual operation. Me, myself, my family, we'll get saved from the flood. Everyone else will get five. Let them go. Have a good day. That was Noah. Then the Zohar says it was Abraham. Abraham was very active in finding people to share godliness with. He was walking around proclaiming God's oneness everywhere he went. But what was he trying to accomplish? Abraham, the first Jew, he was trying to accomplish to create tzaddikim. He wanted a world of righteous people. How do we know that? What happened in Sodom when he went to Sodom and Gomorrah? God says, "I'm going to eradicate these 5 cities in southern Israel." And Abraham says, whoa, maybe there's 50 righteous people there. Then 40, 30, 10, when there was no 10, he turned around and left. Abraham was about proclaiming godliness everywhere, but there was a condition. He wanted to create righteous people. He was able to service and deal with people seeking the path of righteousness of tzaddikim. And then there was the guy that we call Rabbeinu, the guy that we call our master, a.k.a. Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. There's only one guy we call our Rebbe, our master, Moshe. Moshe sees a generation that's sinning, that's misbehaving. What does he do? He prays for all of them. He says to God, "You have to forgive even the wicked Jews, and if you don't, erase my name from your book." Can I talk about chutzpah? Moshe Rabbeinu says, it made no sense. Why should he defend a group of people that sinned with the golden calf? They were sinners. They severed their relationship with God, and they lived in some Musar-based community that probably eradicated them, excommunicated them, and shipped them off to Guantanamo Bay. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't do that. What does Moshe Rabbeinu do? He says to God, no. Yes, of course they sin. It's horrific. The sin of the golden calf is the sin of all sins. Maybe even greater than the sin of eating from the tree in the Garden of Eden. But if you're not going to find it within yourself, Hashem, to forgive my people, I am their leader. I am their shepherd. I am connected at my core with each person in my generation, with every Jew and therefore, if you don't forgive them, erase my name from your Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu could have done what Noah did. He was actually offered. God said, "I would save you and your family." Nope, not interested. I want my generation with me. I want you to forgive them and allow them an opportunity for tshuva. And by the way, you know what Noah got? Noah got that the whole generation, it's called Mei Noach. The whole flood is named after him. Why did you name the flood? The Zohar says, you know why you named the flood after Noah? Because in some sense, on some level, the fact that he didn't go around and inspire the people to change their ways, he waited for them to show up and say, hey, buddy, what are you constructing? What are you building? In some way, he's at fault for the whole flood, so they named it after him. A Roya Yisrael, a real manhig, a real shepherd, which is not just a Rosh Yeshiva, it's not even a Rebbe, not every Rebbe, even a Hasidic Rebbe, not all of them are shepherds. Some of them are businessmen, some of them are great rabbis. To be a shepherd, you have to be a Moshe, you have to have a sensitivity, and you have to have an understanding of each human being. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Roya Neman. He was a faithful shepherd, and he says to Hashem, I'm going to stay in the desert with my generation. And now, going all full circle, now that we understand what a true leader looks like, what a true shepherd looks like, now we understand why Moses had to specifically bless Joshua and didn't have to worry about the other ones. The biggest debate between Yehoshua ben Nun, between Joshua and the other 10 spies, was that the 10 spies, as is explained thoroughly in Hasidic philosophy, the 10 spies were scared of going into Israel for one reason only. The desert was a place where there was manna from heaven. There was a well of water blessed because of Miriam. There was clouds of glory that cleaned and ironed your clothing. It was an incredible place of spiritual bliss. And if they're going to go into Israel, they're going to have to start plowing and planting and dealing with the physicality and materialism. And they didn't want that. Right? They wanted to be a tzaddik. They wanted to be like Shammai. They wanted to be like Noach. They wanted to be this. They wanted to be separated from the superficiality and the negativity and the unholiness that exists in the world. That's the problem with the 10 spies. They were very, very selfish for spiritual reasons, but they were selfish. They wanted their own spiritual aggrandizement. It was about them, not about their mission or the people. Joshua was going to be the next shepherd of the Jews. Moshe needed to ensure that he would never forget what it means to be a leader of the Jews. And what it means to be a leader of the Jews is to think about your people and their mission. And for 99.9% of Jews, the only way to serve God is to work within the world. The life, right? It says, "Harbe asu kirashbi v'lei also be other." Many people tried to do what Reb Shimon Bar Yochai did, to be to live sort of a life of asceticism, aloof in the spiritual realms, being miyachid yichudim. You ever see some of these people say, "Shem yichud." They're screaming l'shem yichud that they're doing some spiritual, but these guys were legit. Moshe needed to make sure that not only while he's in Israel as a spy, but as the next leader of the Jewish people, he had to make sure that he never forgot that he is a leader of the people, understanding the uniqueness of each individual Jew in their service, which again, most of them are not tzaddikim, so they need to work with the real world. So you need to be able to understand what it means to deal with people that are dealing with the real world. I've shared the story, but it's worth repeating. A guy came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said that, I heard there's a zgula. I heard it's a great zgula, a great omen to fold your talus Saturday night after Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, to fold your talus specifically, not to wait till Sunday morning. You're not allowed to fold properly on Shabbos, but after Shabbos to fold the talus. And the Rebbe said, I heard that it's an omen. Oh, he said that he heard that folding his talus on Saturday night is a blessing for peace in the home, for shalom bayit. And the Rebbe said, I heard that washing dishes on Saturday night is an omen for shalom bayit, to have a peaceful marriage, right? In other words, remembering the people, remembering the reality for people. You can't forget the individual, because then you lose your humanity. And you have a spiritual path. It's the avodah tzaddikim of Shammai, of Rashbi, of Noach. No one ever says Noach Rabbeinu. I never heard anyone say Noach Rabbeinu, my master Noah. We talk about him. We learn his story. We learn from him and his life. But no one calls Noach Rabbeinu. You know who we call? Not even Avram Avinu. We call Avram Avinu Abraham, our father. He's a father. By the way, many of us have fathers that we don't learn from because there's nothing to learn from them. I mean, I'm blessed to have a father I learn from, but not just because someone gives birth to you doesn't mean there's something to learn from them. Avraham Avinu was the father of the Jewish people, and he taught us an incredible amount. He's the founder. But to live life as a Yid, to live life as a Jew, you need to have a Moshe Rabbeinu. You need to have a Hillel that can say, I see where you're coming from. We need to talk. Stand on your foot. Come on. Stand on one foot. What you don't like, don't do. Don't do to anyone else. And now let's go learn. The rest of the Torah is an explanation on this foundation of Ahavas Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that if he was going to put Yehoshua in a position to take him over when he reaches 120 years old, and actually he gave him certain leadership roles even while he was alive, but certainly after he passed, he was going to lead the Jews into the land of Israel. Moshe understood he had to give him the opportunity to see a Jew, to see the community, each individual as the unique individual that they are, be able to relate to their challenges and their service in the physical and material world. And then and only then would he succeed not only in his spying episode going to Israel, but he'd succeed as a leader because he was able to be relatable. Right? Who told me? Who said to me? I never saw. Someone said to me, I never saw a rabbi do. I forgot what he was talking about. I said, okay, so mark it down. I never heard a rabbi talk like that. That's what someone told me yesterday in Tucson. I said, good. You think rabbis have to stand on some pedestal and make believe there's something they're not? We're regular people with the same challenges, with the same physical, materialistic temptations and interests. Except our role is to try to inspire and try to uplift. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that if the shepherd becomes too distant from the flock disconnects. And when the flock disconnects, it's very, very hard to reconnect. Hillel understood that. And Moshe Rabbeinu certainly understood. Of course, in our generation, the Rebbe understood that. And so it's a vital lesson for each of us. We are not meant to be Shammai. We are meant, the halacha is like Hillel, except for 3 times. When Mashiach comes, we can switch over to Shammai because we'll be capable of handling that. We can all be tzaddikim, but until then, if we're lucky enough, we'll be people on a journey of tshuva. Halavai, as Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Halavai Beinani, Halavai will be an intermediate. We'll fight for our spiritual well-being, and we'll be able to relate to the Torah because the leaders teaching us the Torah will be connected to the people as shepherds, not as lofty, aloof, distant entities who talk down to us, which was the problem with Noah, and even on some level, the challenge with Abraham. So don't be aloof. Don't be depressed. Don't fall into despair. If you have a challenge, A, don't worry, you have Moshe. And B, just means you're a regular Jew. You're not a tzaddik, you're just one of us. A regular Jew on a path trying to have a relationship with the King of all kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. May we merit the time when finally Shammai will take over. We'll be able to handle that level of meticulousness and that level of focus and that level of constant inner appraisal and inner assessing of our well-being and handle it. In other words, be able to remain focused in that, but that will only happen with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. It's a righteous Mashiach. It'll be speedily in our days. Amen. Sei gesund, have a rockin' rest of the week, and we'll see you back here soon. B'suras Tovos. Margot and Chagai, we did okay?
Mm-hmm. Shammai is an adjuster.
Oh yeah, adjuster. Okay, I said an appraiser.
Appraiser, you're right, appraiser.
Same thing. No. The adjuster comes for accidents. Appraiser does it before the accident.
Yeah.
It's the same job. It's just it's either before the trouble or after the trouble. But I thought it's still in Hebrew. It's still a word. Very good. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Who else? Ruth. Good, Ruth. I don't know who Alex is, but good to see you, Robin. Wonderful. Sei gesund, and we'll see you back here soon.